I know Marcia was intending to be on the call today. She and her husband Ken were going to go, they had a couple errands to run. And she thought she would be back on in time. Um, but yeah, we'll see. And she did say that if nothing else, she'll be on a few minutes late. So she does plan on being here. Um, and let's see about some of the other. Great. It looks like Marcia's tuning in right now. That's great.
I made it.
You did. You made it. That's great. Thank you, Marcia. All right. Well, I think we have one, two, three, four, five, and six. We have our quorum. Fantastic. And with six members, Chris, let me just do a quick roll call. Greg Walsh. Okay, I got you. Danny Steyer.
Here, present.
Thank you. Lettuce Scoggin.
I'm here.
Right. Shelby Leon.
Here.
Great. Matt Fogarty.
Yep, hit.
And Marcia Roby.
Here.
Great. And with us, we've got Kaylee Ward, the Disaster Recovery Coordinator from Plumas County. We have Michaela Trammell, who is the Executive Director of the Dixie Fire Canopy Project. Kim Dufour with North Valley Community Foundation, Director of Strategic Grant Making, and Clint Cobley, the Executive Director of the India Valley Innovation Hub. Great. And with that, may I have a motion to approve today's agenda?
I moved to approve the agenda for today.
Marcia seconds it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, none. Great. And may I please have a motion to approve the March 2nd steering committee meeting minutes?
Also move, Shelby.
Thank you, Shelby.
I'll second. Danny.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, superb. Thank you. Any opposed? All right, hearing none. Great. Okay, we'll move right into our agenda items. First item is public input. Are there any items from the public? All right, we're moving on. The next item is our treasurer's report. Danny, thank you for sending that along. Were there items that you wanted to talk to? I can share some of that.
Yeah, I think we could share up the narrative there, probably,
Okay.
because it's a
Yeah,
good.
let me do that right now.
So basically, as he brings that up, the only change in the inflows, we have $1,757 in the March interest coming in. So we have an inflow of $3,174,657. As far as the grants and things that changed, the grants that were approved and paid out, we have that $513,622 to the Plumas Rural Services for Build for Plumas, and $4,000 to Lost Sierra Food Project. But I want to note there that I see a back out of the $76,726 for the Almer Foundation towards disaster relief reporting. I think that's just going to be a reclassification. I haven't talked to Kim and the people there at North Valley, but has gone out of actually paid out status. So so we're moving that actually down. You can see it comes back into our disaster recovery now, line item 5 as far as commitments. I put it down into commitments.
Yeah, and I think we can, I think that'll definitely come up when we talk about both the Plymouth Sun and the IVCSD
Right.
under the coordinator's report.
Right.
Because I
Okay.
did talk to Kim a little bit about that. I wasn't included on that up front, but other than the fact that the Plymouth Sun is now its own 501c3, so it had been shepherded by the Amador Foundation, and that money originally was earmarked for the Amador Foundation. But I think now that it's its own entity, that's going to change. So anyway, we'll talk about that when we get to that. Oh,
I believe that's the case, but I just had to do that so I could get through attempt to reconcile. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's an okay thing just to discuss right now the mechanics of what happened in that Plymouth Sun reached out and said, good news, we've now gotten our 501c3 status, and good news, we just hired a reporter. And so rather than have Almanor Foundation, they were kind of just holding it as the interim or nonprofit to help them out until they got their own status. So it just happened that they got their status about the same time. The reporter's just been hired, has not started working yet. And so our accounting team determined that because Almanor Foundation couldn't really just give the money to another 501c3, if they brought it back into your account, then it would go back out to Plymouth Sun. We just need to verify, like with State of California and Attorney General, yes, they have their status, they're good to go, and then it would be re-granted out to the Plymouth Sun, and then they'd be the people completing all the reports and doing everything with the grant. So on that grant, basically nothing's been spent to date.
Right. And so therefore I'll wait for that grant distribution email from North Valley to document that, then we'll put it back into the grants approved under the appropriate heading. And kind of along that line, I went ahead and included the La Sierra Food Project because I see that on the North Valley page, but I didn't get the notification on that. So
I just signed the grant agreement this week, so I'm guessing it might go out in this week's check run or next week's check run. So it hasn't, they just signed the grant agreement.
yeah, but I guess I'm saying it goes against the balance, so I had to include it here so I could get the things balances to work out. So that's why I'm declaring it as paid.
Yeah, it went out on 4/6/2026. It went out today. Look, the La Sierra Food Project.
Okay, well, great. So I think we're good covered on the grants. And just looking at the expenditures, I did get an invoice for expenditures for the website, but I'll process this evening and such because I was trying to get things together because on the balance I differentiate by a penny, and I know some people don't think that's too much, but I've got to figure out where that's at. So I didn't want to add some more confusions into the balance. So I have that request. Kim, you've seen that. I don't think we need to discuss that too much, but that's where we're at. But I will be paying out an additional probably $300 some odd for website maintenance will come out of the overall available funds. And so I'm showing here that on 5, we have that disaster recovery report that's going to go back out in commitments. So looking at where we're at right now, then we have a total outflow of $2,835,109.59, or 89.3% of the inflow, the money that came in. And so looking at, we have as far as available funds was $339,547.41. So that's where we're at today as far as available funds to grant or potentially grant. That's in my report there, Patrick. Anybody got any other questions?
Great. Thank you, Danny. Greg, you had your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yeah. So does this mean that the Plymouth Sun is no longer requesting money from us, or now that they've got their own 501(c)(3), or
No, no, the grant is still intact from what they requested back in August. That's still in effect. It's just that they were working since the time that they got started to establish their own nonprofit organization. And I don't know when it occurred, but in the last couple months, they received their notification from the IRS and some of the other associated bodies that they are now their own entity, as opposed to being sponsored by the Almanor Foundation.
okay,
So-
so that grant request is still at play then. They're still looking for funding.
It's still being granted. It's being granted,
Yeah.
Greg. It's granted.
Yeah.
It's just changing a name. That's all that's going on.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So that $76,000 is still allocated to them.
Right.
Yeah, and if you just kind of look at it, that the funds you granted was to pay for this new reporter, and the new reporter has not started working yet. So that new reporter, I believe, will start working in the next month, the one that's dedicated to disaster recovery. So,
All right, back
Okay.
back.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Any additional questions or comments on the treasurer's report right now? Okay, great. Next up, we have Michaela Trammell from the Dixie Fire Canopy Project. And she has, so if you recall, last month, the Dixie Fire Canopy Project had a $150,000 grant request, excuse me, with regard to providing a third season of tree planting with regard to their primary program as the DFCP has existed. Since that last meeting, Michaela has, I think she briefly discussed it last month, but what she's done is she's moved farther ahead on a program that the Dixie Fire Canopy Project is calling the Canopy of Care. And this is sort of a new program, not sort of, I mean, it's definitely a new program for the Canopy Project as they endeavor on different programs and projects that they'd like to undertake underneath what the project has done thus far, and then pursue kind of a longer term plan and program that Michaela will tell you about here. The dollar amount remains consistent, so we're looking at a general request from us, from the Dixie Fire Collaborative, rather, as a $150,000 grant request, but the details of which are vastly different from what you've heard from last month. So, a little background, a little seed setter, and Michaela, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so we heard you and about being sustainable long term and what happens when the grant funding locally runs out. And so we have been working on this project for a little over a year now, but we were only recently able to really hammer out the details and see what that would look like. What that looks like is obtaining property in the Greenville location within the Dixie Fire burn scar to create a nonprofit nursery, a community garden, and a housing component. This would allow us to distribute trees at a much quicker pace than what we've been doing. People would be able to come straight to us to get those trees if they reside within that burn scar. And then if they still needed assistance planting, they would be able to sign up right then and there, and it would kind of cut our planting list much shorter. As well as the community garden for food security. We've already spoken with La Sierra Food Project regarding a partnership, and they're very interested in partnering with us on that. And then I have spoken with a few of you individually regarding the housing component and what that looks like, and that the goal is to include a private housing sanctuary for domestic violence victims and their children. With a kind of shared space community building that they could get any kind of classes, therapy, financial independence courses, workshops, things like that for life in their next chapter. So what I've shared with you is the grant request. It does look a lot different than last month's, and It did take me quite a bit of time to kind of try and word it perfectly to where it could be easily understandable, as well as you could kind of see the long-term goal that we have for this property. So we are requesting $150,000 for the property purchase. We went to the county planning department and we got the property value, the assessed property value, and that's kind of where we'll start our first offer. And we're looking to kind of meet somewhere in the middle range of around $100,000. And anything left over would then go towards equipment to start bringing in revenue as well as development. So our budget was a little bit basic. You can kind of see there that it's only the last two line items would be able to happen if we were able to secure that property for under the asking price that's currently on the market. It's currently listed at $199,500, but again, it's assessed at $32,500. So we do think that we would have a little bit of back and forth in our negotiations, but we have also been offered a backup property to discuss with somebody that would also be another 10 acres. It's in a different location in Greenville, but still right there on the outskirts. So I want to make sure I'm opening it up for any questions so far. You can see that we have site development in there, as well as the mini excavator to begin to develop all the areas we would hopefully have on that property.
Team, I sent this out with the agenda and whatnot, so you should have a copy. I'm happy to continue to share it if necessary, but any immediate questions on what I have, and then I can stop sharing just so we can.
I have a question. So Mickey,
Yeah,
have you
go
had
ahead.
any conversations with the owner yet, or the owner's broker, or anything like that?
We've tried to reach out through our broker to see if a conversation was possible, to see what kind of price we may be looking at. The problem is it's a larger corporation that just assumed a mortgage that somebody had defaulted on. So they don't really have the capacity to speak with us regarding it. We just have to kind of make the offer and see if we can go back and forth through that. But it's not a local bank, is what I have been told. So I have not been able to have an actual conversation with them.
Can you make the offer before you get the grant?
I cannot make an offer without proof of funds.
Okay.
Any
Lyda,
questions?
Lyda, do
Yeah,
you have a question?
how big is the property? Probably there,
10.43
right?
acres.
It's 24 acres?
10.43 acres.
10.4. Oh, so the other one, they're both equivalent in terms of size, the backup property and this one.
Yeah, the backup
Okay.
property would be a little bit more expensive as it's for sale by owner and not by a bank that just
Yeah. Okay. And I think you already have some indication that the property could be zoned for, or is zoned for, the purpose, including the residential a home for women with domestic abuse backgrounds.
yeah,
Is that right?
I have spoken with Tracy in depth about this property. It can be zoned for both the nonprofit nursery community garden, as well as two main housing structures, as well as multiple ADUs on that, to get approximately 6 to 8 units of private housing on there. And we do understand that there's going to be a lot of red tape when it comes to domestic violence housing and things like that. So, we have been talking back and forth on what this looks like. We've spoken with Plumas Rural Services to potentially partner up with them. They would still need to provide those services to those victims and their families. So we have had the conversations with them. And, long-term scenario, if, we would still be putting housing for a cheap rental price in the burn scar if we were not able to get through all of those different red tape hoops, things like that. So that's our long-term goal, is to still be able to provide that domestic violence housing. But ultimately, if we can still provide some sort of housing within the burn scar, we think that's a win in our area.
Greg, you have your hand up?
Yeah, Michaela, I talked to Ted Stout, and he told me that he had offered to let you have a tree farm on his property for free.
Um, I have never, I don't, when I requested to possibly use one of his buildings for an office, I know that he said that he wasn't interested in that. I think maybe he was okay with us storing trees on his property. But we did have a really great property owner a little bit closer to the town of Greenville that offered us that location to store trees on.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of people did come forward trying to help this project out, and it's been amazing, but he was not willing to open up the building on his property for any kind of office use or people to come to his property to pick up trees.
Yeah, no, he said tree farm. He didn't say office to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're looking at something that we can actually apply to grants on behalf of that property, be able to list it under the grants as an asset for a little bit of leverage to be more competitive in a lot of those grants. If
So,
it's a if it's a private property offering their space, we are required to have a 30-year lease agreement.
okay. Um, I don't, I mean, to me, this sounds like, last year you missed an estimate on something and got bailed out for $75,000, correct?
19,000.
It was 19 is what you got bailed out for the the Legion Hall.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
it was
underestimated the irrigation.
$19,200, I think.
Okay. And so I'm just wondering, like, this sounds like an incredibly big, complex, multi-year project that's really straying incredibly far from your original mission and is well into Plumas Rural Services mission. I'm just wondering why we need to do that instead of just keeping you busy doing what you do and what you've gained experience on and you're focused on, instead of like buying a property that all of a sudden you're going to have some other purpose on it from your mission, your original mission. I don't understand it. I mean, I support the canopy project, but this is kind of feels like everything. You know what I mean? Like you're trying to throw everything at it.
Yeah, I completely understand that. Our mission would adjust a little bit to include the new initiatives, but it would also stay much the same as what it was before. Our ultimate mission is to provide as many trees as possible within the Dixie Fire burn scar for as cheaply as possible to the people that are rebuilding. And this would allow us to do so. This would allow us to house trees over winter. We would be able to put a cooler up for the seedlings that people want to use to reforest their acreage that was burned. We would be able to do so much more with a space that we can actually develop and put out there to the community to have full use of, instead of just leasing a private property that nobody's allowed to come to. We would be able to be more successful in our distribution events. We would be able to advertise it more long term. So, the housing is always something that everybody's talking about in the burn scar. We do believe that we could, with use of that property, incorporate it into our original mission, as well as providing greater assistance to more people. Ultimately, the domestic violence, that's something I'm passionate about. It is something that I have experienced in my life. So the Dixie Fire Canopy project was something that I was able to focus on while readjusting all of my everyday life and leaving that situation. And unfortunately, with Plumas Rural Services, that was not an option to me because it was shared housing and there is only one in the county. So this would open up more options, more housing that's private. It feels a little bit better when you're leaving a traumatic situation. Um, we did underestimate the cost of irrigation prices for the American Legion Hall, but thankfully now we have a much better understanding of what that's going to look like for the size parcel that it would be on when working with those distributors. So,
But this is like you're looking at, you're talking about multi-use property with housing and then you've got Airbnb stuff that you said, if they're not available, you're going to like rent out these little units, right, to keep them so cash flow is going on. I mean, it just sounds like, like I think that you should pare that way back. I think that it's out of your bailiwick. I mean, I got it that I'm not saying there's not a need, and I'm not saying you're not passionate. I'm just saying there's a whole lot of complexity involved in this. I mean, who's going to run it? Who's going to build it? Who's going to fund it? I think that, in the meantime, we just gave Plymouth Rural Services money to build workers' housing. They're getting money for low-cost housing, and they can use some of that for, women's shelter. I mean, I don't see why we need to buy a property, for you to store trees on. I mean, in terms of the longevity of the Canopy project, I think you need to follow the fires. Quite honestly, I think you should be down in LA. Because at a certain point, I mean, how many trees are you going to plant here? Like, I think that you should be, doing a Canopy project where there's burn scars, not just here.
Okay, so Greg, we understand that you have some issues with the general premise of the grant itself.
Yeah.
Okay, so got that. Matt, you have your hand up.
Yeah. So part of the plan is to do a commercial or like a nursery. So, I mean, the closest thing I can think about is like Gray's Nursery in Quincy, and when you have like a retail thing like that, you've got to have it staffed normally by at least one person. I mean, like maybe two sometimes, And one concern I have is that it's hard enough doing a business on the high street, on the highway, like I've got here in Crescent Mills, but having a business, like building your business on a road that gets very, very little traffic, for a business that relies on people passing and thinking, okay, I'll get a plant for my sister's whatever birthday or whatever it is, or I don't know, I need a bag of soil for planting out something, whatever goes on at Gray's Nursery. But a lot of that stuff is, I think that because it's there and because it's visible from the highway, they get a lot of business. So can you talk about your thoughts about having it kind of off the beaten path versus on the beaten path? Because there's lots of properties available for sale with highway frontage that could probably work out if that's the way you want to go.
Yeah, so the second property that I was talking about is highway frontage. It's right there on the main drag, easily accessible to the general public within walking distance. And it would be in a beautiful area to be able to kind of start planting trees in with a wonderful backdrop. The reason for the alternative property, the one that we're currently looking at, is because we had not known about that other highway frontage property right away until we started talking about this one, as well as the discretion for housing the victims of domestic violence. We wanted it to be close enough to the new safety center for a response time, while also keeping their dignity and privacy as a main factor. So planting a wonderful green space and kind of closing it in with all kinds of plants and trees. That was the idea of the healing space. So that's kind of where we decided to approach the one on Williams Valley Road. It was the only one of that size that was being offered. So we do definitely have the highway frontage one in mind. It would just take a little bit longer to go through that process because it is not currently listed for sale.
Is that the one next to the jerky place?
Yes, it is.
All right. The one to the left that's got the building on it, like welding shop, or to the right?
I believe to the right. Yeah, Kaylee Benz does own that property.
Okay.
Okay. What other thoughts or questions do we have?
Wouldn't setting up a nonprofit nursery, like I know that what's her name? Layla Jean Levy has a nursery going on out in
Tennessee.
Tennessee. Yeah. I mean, aren't we like setting up competition with an existing business by doing this and undercutting an existing business? I mean, is that
No. She's actually even offered to potentially come out and host workshops for tree propagation and
Oh.
things like that. She was one of, well, she was one of our tree recipients to replant her farm and everything like that, being within the burn scar. So we do have a very close working relationship with her as well.
good? I was going to ask you about that. Yeah. All right.
So Mickey, if you
Yes, Marcia, go
get the
ahead.
other
Yeah.
property that's by Haley, would that still include the housing for the victims of abuse?
That is, yeah, so that is the goal. Ultimately, that is our overall goal for the canopy of care, just because we do have such a wonderful working group that's kind of working towards that. And a couple of our working group is employees with Plumas Rural Services. And to kind of go back to Greg's question a little bit, PRS absolutely does not have the capacity to add additional safe housing units in Plumas County. Their main focus is the workforce housing in the Greenville area, and that will be their main goal for quite some time. And they have no intentions of adding the additional housing. Um, you know, we've been going back and forth with Paula and everything with regarding statistics and different ins and outs of what it would look like. So I can say with full confidence that we would not be kind of crossing over. Instead, it would be more like a partnership where we would be providing the housing, they would be providing the services. And then Plumas Crisis Intervention Center may possibly be able to provide those rental incomes. We do not have an intention to do any kind of Airbnbs for the area. We would do probably some long-term housing or short-term housing for traveling nurses if those units were vacant and we had the capacity to do so. That would be our main focus. But yes, if
Rental
with the property next to Riley's, it would be a little bit more expensive, like I had mentioned, just because it is privately owned, and we would have to match what they were hoping to get for that property. This one being kind of a corporate bank that's been sitting on it for over 400 and some odd days, we do feel like there's room to negotiate that price down to a realistic number that we could still have funding left over to begin development. And we have already been offered a greenhouse to be able to probably put on that property. La Sierra Food Project has also offered to come and help volunteer to set that greenhouse up to be able to be used. We would be providing trees still to the people rebuilding instead of, our main focus would be to provide to people rebuilding. And if selling some on the side is what brings in the additional revenue, that's great after they've already received those free trees. But we do still have the community benefits in the back of our mind ultimately.
How much are the taxes on that property?
I have no idea on the taxes yet. I have not been able to run a title report without any funding to be able to purchase property. But Tracy is pretty confident that we could get it for a lower amount with the assessed value. So I do believe it would all be within the scope of what we would be offering. We would not offer over $100,000.
What's the budget for your buildings? Your anticipated budget for your buildings?
That's where we would try to leverage the USDA funds or other types of business loans. So we would try and see if we could secure USDA funding for housing at that point. But again, we would still be looking into all the different housing grants that were available to us once we were able to secure the property.
So you don't have a number?
We do have connections with a local engineer. So to build them and everything like that with the ADUs, we're looking at probably around $400,000 to $500,000 per primary property. But that again, that is around for probably 5 units. But the secondary property could not have as many units as the first primary property. It could only have 1 ADU off of it. So there was, Tracy was explaining it to me how the first primary could have an attached, a detached, and then like a in-law type of quarters. So 3 ADUs off of that one. And then the first or the second one could not have as many allotted as the first one.
And so you think it's like for $500,000, you could get these units when? Like, I mean, when would you like think about building them? How far off in the future is that?
We would begin looking immediately for those grants, but realistically on our timeline, we've put between 3 to 5 years to begin construction on those. Once we reach 5 years worth of financials, we'll be in a good place to request USDA funding, and we're about 3 years in.
Okay.
So we'll go to Danny and Matt, and just real quick, has to do with this grant, and then the other ones that we're going to hear from Clint. And more often than not, especially when we're hearing something new, there's a tremendous amount of work that still needs to be determined, and part of what's consistent with that work is getting, funding in order to start to answer some questions. And so, of course, Greg, your questions are relevant. And of course, for the rest of the team, questions, comments, concerns are all this because we're talking about significant amounts of money. I would just like to, across the board, as we ask our questions, that we continue to maintain a little bit of respect and the time and effort for for the people that come to request the grants, that they are coming as prepared as they can with some of the information, and there are always going to be unknowns and there are going to be some what ifs. Again, these are good questions, and it's completely relevant and germane to the conversation. But let's just keep that in mind as we continue to kind of peel back the onion here, whether it's this grant or any others that we hear today. Danny Steyer, your question, and then we'll go to Matt.
Yeah, kind of quick, right, to follow what you're saying is right now, I would say, based on what you're saying, based on some of the questions right now, I can't see a voting decision even being approached in the near future with a lot of these questions. Kind of reflecting what you're saying, reflecting what has been presented, we need to digest a little bit more. So one thing too is that I'm looking at is so we're transitioning, we're swapping away from trees. And I see that the grant request is for $272,000, of which 150 is what the need, the need is $273,500. That's what the need to do the project. It's what's been presented. And so you're requesting 150,000 of that. So there's still a bit has to be gone out and gotten moved forward. And of that 150,000 you're requesting, 100,000 is going to be gone for the purchase of the property. So it's going to be out. But I understand the idea of why don't you take the offer from Ted as far as a place to raise trees. Because you do need the leverage, you need the property in order for funding, and property is, it's money in the bank or some reference, some first security. So I see that getting the property is for the leverage. And I don't doubt that the desire to provide shelter for women escaping, or I should say people escaping domestic violence. We want to be open to that. But just to be aware of that. And then the other thing with housing, I want to come up and it's a little thing that's been nagging in the back of my head. We're working on housing, trying to get housing, but then also, I don't know what the full utilization of the housing on Hot Springs Road or in the old mill yard on the other side of the flats, because there's some still out there. And I think some of the stuff that I understand is on Hot Springs Road, some of those, got smoke damage and such or whatever might not be available. So just from the housing, that's the only reason I brought that up, because you did mention some housing. So
yeah, Danny, are you talking about the Green Meadows, the low income housing?
Right, the one over by the hospital. Right.
Yep. So that we can talk more about that.
Yeah.
That I do know a little bit about that from the standpoint of the Plumas County Community Development Commission as they operate those. And yes, you're right. They are in the process of flipping a couple of those so they're habitable, because they do have a wait list for that community right now. But I can find out more about that. But we can talk a little bit about that. Both the representatives from the PCC DC were at the Housing Council meeting a week and a half ago. But anyway, I can follow up on that for you.
Yeah, and just the other one is the houses out on the other side of the flats there in the old mill yard. So just to make sure that we have those as, look at those as housing prospects. So and so I'm, I hear this switch here, but I'm equally concerned. But so those are some of the things, and for the Powerball that I'm about to pitch here is that I just don't want to think that we got a different way to approach for a money grab. Okay, I'll just say that. I'll just say in search of money, and we want Michaela and her business to be stable going forward, but we also want not just to be relying on people keeping her afloat. All right.
Okay. Matt, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just thinking about the property, because at the moment you've got an eye on a property and they want 200 grand, but you haven't had a conversation yet, but you're assuming you could get it for 100. You may not be able to get it for 100. Like, maybe you could think about another way around, which would be, okay, maybe my budget will be 100. What can I afford for 100? Because then you can like examine, do you really need 10 acres? Like, could you do 5 acres? Like 5 acres is like a massive amount of land already, just to look after for havers gardens or housing. Like 5 acres is massive. And if that's like more reasonable for your 100 grand, like if you want to do 100 grand for spending, then maybe you could look at it a different way, because there's a lot of risk for that property, right? They may say no, they don't want to sell it for 100 grand. I mean, they want 200 grand for some reason. So, and then if Kaylee's one's going to be more expensive, I don't know if you've had that conversation about how much he wants, but I mean, those are really important things for this grant, about how much is this land. And at the moment, I don't know that you had those conversations yet. And are you coming it from the right way? If you thought of it the other way around, about, well, if I want to budget 100 grand for land, what's available for 100 grand? If you did it the other way around, rather than thinking that the 200 grand might be 100 grand. So, but the main thing in terms of thinking about the flexibility around the size, do you really need 10 acres if you've got 100 grand?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have thought about it from all angles. You know, Fortunately, with Kaylee's property, we have had that conversation. I've been able to talk to him really in depth about it. And there is the possibility that for a lower amount, he could offer up less acres. We could probably split it in two to be able to focus on our nonprofit nursery, community garden, maybe the equipment rentals, things like that. And then as we continue to grow, bring in revenue, look at buying those additional acres as needed for housing if it fit within our wheelhouse later. I do believe it would still be around that $100,000 to $150,000 budget, as that's what we had kind of discussed. But again, I won't know unless I can make an offer of the 32,500. Maybe that is the best way to go. If I can make an offer and it gets accepted, even just so they can get out from under it, well, we just bought a wonderful size property that we could develop and turn into something really beautiful for the Greenville area for 32,500. And at that point, that's that much money that would go towards more purchase of trees, kicking trees out a lot quicker, being able to really get developed, and seeing our goals start moving in the right direction for self-sustainability. It's not about a money grab. We are ultimately trying to figure out how can we best help everybody in the area. How can we put out as many trees as possible in such a short amount of time? As people continue to rebuild, they keep reaching out to try and get those trees planted on their property. There's no short game here. This is going to be a long-term project. We want to see those lots built on. We want to see those houses put back. And if it means that they're able to get those free trees put back on those properties, that's enticing to them. We are spreading far beyond what we have the capacity to do at this rate. We don't have the area where people can come and just pick up those trees from us and they're able to stay healthy. So this is kind of our solution to that. You kind of asked how we would be self-sustainable, and this is what we came up with. So there is a lot of conversations that could be had. If they are not willing to sell that property for $100,000 or less, we are not going to purchase it. And that's when we would open up our conversations with other property owners in the area that still have the property size we need to complete our initiatives, to be able to build on, to have a nice size greenhouse on, to be able to also start offering native tree species. That's really important in our area. That's what a lot of funders really want to see, is us putting those native tree species out instead of just the ornamentals or the fruit trees. So being able to partner with a local entity that provides those native tree species as well, that's a key factor when going for grants. So, we do have a lot of people in our area that have the experience and expertise on those species, and we would love to include them in that property as well. So something that's going to be the right size that fits everybody and is able to bring in the revenue. We can have semi trucks that are coming in, dropping off those trees. I don't know if you've seen our trees from Western Tree Nursery or those trucks that bring them in, but they are huge, and sometimes 3 of them come at a time. So we would need something that was big enough to be accommodating for that. So that's kind of where we're looking at those larger size properties, the 5 acres. When you start getting under that, it does not zone for any kind of nursery operations or anything like that. So
Okay. Well, thank you for some more of that refinement, Michaela. And so across the board, what I'm hearing and my basic understanding of this is that there's a tremendous amount of more questions overall with the scope of the canopy of care. So most of this information, I believe, was first heard for the steering committee today. You have the hard copy grant request that was emailed to you. And so what I'm recommending right now is we just table this grant request for right now upon further review of more information. Is that satisfactory to everyone?
Good. Table for me.
Okay.
Can,
Yep. So
can
Danny.
I request what that specific information is? I know that I won't be able to provide any kind of pricing on anything unless I can make that offer. So if you could let me know exactly what questions you'd like answered so I could begin working on those, that would be wonderful to me.
Yeah. My sense is that there might be a few, just based off of what we've heard thus far, is that a question sort of begets 3 to 4 others. So what I'm recommending is that I establish an email with the steering committee here to kind of sketch some of that out. And I think what I'll do is maybe once I turn to the minutes here, add some of those of what has already been discussed, and then we can work some further refinement from that, if that sounds good to everybody. My fear is that you may in this venue get like many questions of which it becomes a list then. And I think there's probably some conceptual thematic things that if you answered broadly of your financing, the property size and scope of really what it is they need, that this right sizing, some of the partnerships that you're going to have in the future, some of the availability of the grant funding that you're talking about and what specifically that grant funding is and what it looks like. And couple that and nest that with a timeline that might get us part of the way there. And then that way, steering committee members can then email in a collective and ask some more pointed questions as well. Greg, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'd be interested, in how much would you need, Michaela, to keep doing business the way you've been doing it so that you could be planting trees now while all of this other stuff, the long range stuff, is being considered? Like, what would you need for just trees to keep your status quo going?
We are still looking to do our giveaways this year. with the request of the DFC kind of asking about our long-term sustainability. So we'll have a giveaway event in May, partnered with the Greenville Museum for a planting event for Main Street properties, as well as a giveaway in October, partnered with the Arbor Day Foundation. And we're hoping to kind of cover everybody that's signed up on our list already that's been patiently waiting for trees at that October giveaway event. So, you
Is,
know,
is the giveaway your regular planting trees at various properties, or is this everybody comes and gets a little seedling ones that you did, like an Arbor Day?
no, they're established trees. The past couple years, we've been providing trees in about 15-gallon pots for those giveaway events. And
Are
it's
those the ones
been
that you're setting up for the watering and all of that other stuff? So, I mean, to just do it function exactly as you've been doing.
It would be the original request that we had submitted last year, plus with a couple other organizations contributing to that as well. So still around with the workforce wages and everything, the request would be about the same to the Dixie Fire Collaborative. And then we would look into alternative additional funding sources to be able to complete out our season.
Okay. Thank you.
What I'm sharing right now is the request that we received back in February. This is the general budget for that. So this was $150,000, and you can see the breakdown of the trees and shrubs. But it's the operations and administrative costs that are also significant. So the previous request was for 150K. It was just dispersed based off of it would be dispersed based off of this budget, unless something has changed, Michaela.
No.
Okay. So again, Michaela, I'll get something established this week, email wise, and then continue to kind of adjust this from there. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very
All right.
much.
Thank you for your time today. All right. Moving on to our next item. So Clint Cobley is with us again from the Indian Valley Innovation Hub. He has shared some grants with us. The grant that I sent you on Friday is on the agenda. I have it identified as the Indian Valley Job Creation Grant Program, and it is now the Community Job Creation Grant Program. So slight naming change there. And there's some, with regard to the content, and hopefully you had some time to review it, there's some changes fundamentally to maybe not the purpose of the grant, but the mechanism of how the grant would work. And then also is the $10,600 e-commerce grant, which has been on our radar for a number of months as well. So with that, Clint, over to you with the job creation grant. And if you want to talk about the substantive changes and just illuminate that for the team, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. I'd like to start with the online grant first. It's short and it'll be, won't take as much time. So thank you again, Patrick. Thank you again, everybody on the DFC, board. This is the same amount of dollar requests that I've made, I think, a couple of times. One of the issues last time is that I didn't have my charity registration number with the California State Attorney General's office, which I have received. The number is CT0302597. I think I sent it to you, Pat, and maybe to you, Kim. I also, when I got this from the California State Attorney General, I also sent them our IRS taxes for 2024 and also a copy of our Form 990N, which we also had done for 2024. So we're wrapping up, getting ready for our taxes for 2025. So we haven't quite sent that in yet. We're trying to make the deadline. So anyway, this is a request, for the online store. It would take about a minimum of 2 months, maybe maximum of 3 months to get it up and going. It would achieve several goals that I covered before, but one, most importantly, would increase sales for the current 85 product makers that we have across the county, including 17 from Indian Valley. As you know, we sold just under $68,000 in products from the Made in Plumas County store in 2025, from all 85 product makers. We started the year out with 25 product makers in 2025, ended with 85, so we really, really expanded. It would also help grow the brand of the Made in Plumas County. Just so you know, coming from Nevada, we have a very successful Made in Nevada program where we have brick and mortar stores, several in the state that just, specialize in Made in Nevada products. So it's a very successful brand in Nevada, in Humboldt County. You can go to Made in Chico. There's a number of different places in California. There's also a Made in California plan. So we're hoping to help grow the brand a lot. And I think this would be a really great benefit to some of the product makers in Indian Valley as well as across the county, in the fact that this would be very little expense on their part. We would endure the cost of setting up the online store and incorporating all of our current product makers. So it would give them new markets, and they wouldn't have to set this up themselves, where we would set it up. And so that's really a great benefit, I feel, for all of our product makers, and again, especially for the 17 product makers we have in Indian Valley. So that's kind of the final details I guess I want to give. I think the last time again was we weren't current with the state AG's office, and we are now. So we have all of our other registrations, certifications, taxes paid, and all those things, but we didn't have the AG's office, and now we do. So I'll entertain any questions, and then I can move on to the community jobs program.
Yeah, Tim, so if you recall, this has been briefed a number of times, I think since October. And so fundamentally, not a lot of changes on this one. But definitely, if there's any questions, comments, or any other ideas, thoughts, considerations. Okay, would anybody like to put forth a motion to approve $10,600 to support the e-commerce online store for the Indian Valley Innovation Hub? It's like Marcia's trying to come off mute.
Yeah, I would like to put forth a motion to spend the 10,000 and change for the e-commerce store. It would
So a
help
motion for
business and-
$10,600. Great. Okay. And may I have a second?
I'll second it.
Greg Walsh. Okay, and we'll do a roll call vote. Marcia Roby,
Yay.
Greg Walsh,
Yes.
Danny Steyer,
Yes.
Matt Fogarty,
Yes.
Lyda Scoggin,
Yes.
and Shelby Leon.
Yes.
Okay, and so the motion to approve $10,600 to the Indian Valley Innovation Hub's e-commerce online store grant is approved. All right, well, there you go, Clint. Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. We hope to make you proud. We're so excited that this took off. When we started this, we had no idea where it would go. We just knew that in other places it was successful, and we thought, well, there's no better place in Plumas County. We have so many businesses that are trying to get started or you know trying to recover, and this is one way. And having the storefront, but now to go to an online, I think is going to be extremely beneficial, because we get a lot of people that come into our store from Plumas County that come in for special occasions, and they say, oh gosh, I wish we could order online, because when I go home I might think of something, but they don't know how to order, because we don't really do orders online, and now we could. So thank you very much for that, and your support, and we'll do our best to have a great online store. So thank you.
Okay, So the next item is the updated community job grant program.
Okay, and again, there was a number of questions on this last time. Again, one of them was with the state AG's office, and I covered that, just a moment ago with the online store, but we have taken care of that, So essentially, this would still be a lot of the Indian Valley Jobs Creation Program where we would be putting money to businesses that hire people. But to look at this as a community benefit, not only for the employers and employees that would be involved in this, but for any employer or employee in Indian Valley. I wanted to get more of a workforce training by requiring employers, that do request financial assistance to put all their new employees and current employees through training that would include business training, business recovery training, workforce stabilization, technical assistance. And the goal is to go beyond the general workplace traits and connect everything to real local outcomes, keeping our businesses open, improving visitor experience, and strengthen the local economy. I think you all know that it's a tough economic climate out there right now, and I think it's especially difficult for Plumas County. That's got hit with all the other disasters everybody else did, the recession and the pandemic and the Dixie Fire. But Plumas County got hit really hard with that, so it's been really tough for us, and it's been a tough economic year. I'm not going to get into any political aspects, but I can tell you that retail sales have been really challenging. Um, Room taxes have been extremely challenging across the county, and there's probably no better time to help the local economy than now. It's probably going to be a tough economic climate for the rest of the year. I can tell you that in 2025, Plumas County was ranked number 11 in the 59 counties, down from the previous 24 as far as median household income. And unfortunately, in January of this year, Plumas County slipped into the bottom 10 poor counties in California when you consider poverty rates overall and the average median income for two people, household for two people, which is only $66,031, So and I think if you wanted to look to any ROI or any success, and if Kelly Ward is still on there, I think the boost to local businesses from the 2021 Dixie Fire for-profit economic development grant has been, I think, enormously successful. And I think it's really helped, reinvigorate, businesses. So to backtrack a little bit, this is more than just to award, finances, to businesses that want to hire, want to expand. It's to really work on workforce training, workforce stabilization, technical assistance, and things like that. So to make our businesses as strong as they can be. And for me, I guess, and there may be some debate, but I really think this is for a community benefit. I'm willing to put these trainings on for any business in Indian Valley, not just the ones that hire. I have a complete outline on what employees expect from employers and vice versa. Excuse me, plus a lot of the training, for both employers and employees in having more productive businesses. And that would be part of an hour-long session that I would cover with each business, or if I had to cover it individually with employees that are hired out of this process, I certainly would do that. My goal is to reinvigorate our struggling economy right now, especially in the wildfire, places like Greenville and Indian Valley. So that's basically my new approach to this. I do see it as more of a community benefit. I think it's a community benefit to have workforce training, workforce stabilization. It's to the community's benefit. I think it's been done before, but this is how I feel it could and probably should be best promoted. So I'll leave it at that and take questions.
All right, team. Yeah, any thoughts and concerns?
Remind me how much you're asking for.
I think it's 150,000.
It's 150,000.
Yeah, I didn't change the financial numbers. I just changed the approach as far as what would be required with the financial assistance for employers and employees, and just to turn this into maybe more of a community benefit than just a financial benefit for businesses.
I like the educational component. I think that's a great idea.
Well, I think, places that are struggling, but still on a scenic corridor really have to work hard to, put, advocate, the community experience. And there's nothing like really well-trained employees that show up on time, know what's expected of them, know how to help a customer, know how to maybe make adjustments in their service to customers that will, please the customer, please the people that are in the shop and things like that. So it's all part of, I think, an overall plan on boosting or reinvigorating, the economy in Indian Valley.
And so, Marcia, if you recall, this would be if business X, Y, or Z applies, they would receive $7,500 generally in order to uh, pay for staffing. So that $7,500 would go to the wages to support additional staffing at a
But then
business.
an employee would have to go through the training.
And you talked to Kim about this idea, and you like that
Well,
idea
we
better.
have initially, and I think, under the initial presentation, I don't think it was looked at maybe as maybe qualifying. Kim, do you have any thoughts now, since we do want to turn this into
Sure.
more educational workforce training and stabilization effort?
And I would need to have Bill, this proposal just came in on Friday, and so Bill has not had a chance to review it from it. Bill was the one who came back before and talked about that.
Sure.
For a community foundation, it just didn't really meet, come sign up first, come first serve, you just get the money or pass it, um, he had the basically saying it wouldn't kind of pass the IRS and the auditors, thing. And so Bill has not had a chance to look at this proposal to see if it's just kind of, if there's criteria, is it any business can apply? Can it, does business have to be a certain income? Can Sierra Pacific apply? I mean, not that they would, but could any business apply? That type of thing. I definitely would have to have Bill review that.
Yeah.
And if you guys want to move it forward, we can have him take the time and energy to have him do that. But if it's a project that you're thinking no longer fits your criteria, then I won't have him spend his time.
So if you recall last month when we talked about this, there was the aspect of a charitable class of what meets the threshold of a charitable class for foundations or nonprofits in order to be able to award dollars to, and that was a specific hang up for Bill on the legal side of the house. Let me get to Danny's question.
Yeah, I was just looking at that differential between, what's changed, what is, to me, it would have to be a bigger shift than I see apparent at this point. I'm not seeing it. The thing is, if it all went to a training and everybody was required to come to the training, then afterwards, you would have a bulk training that appears in a couple different places. And then doesn't necessarily go back to that the companies get monetary benefit for doing this. Because I say that, how is the company a charitable organization? That's kind of the sense. I'm not quite seeing that yet. So,
Yeah. Well, my approach, good question, Danny. My approach still is that I think it's for the community benefit to have financial assistance and training to the workforce and workforce stabilization, and I'm willing to either do a setting in front of a company's employees or do it one-on-one. I've got the curriculum all put together. I've done it before, so it's easy for me. I could do it on a Zoom, I could do it on a phone call, I can do it in person. I'm not going to just send it. I mean, this is going to be face to face in some way, shape, or form. But I really feel that um, I think at this point, and this applies both in Indian Valley, and this is just my opinion, but I think throughout, I think any retail business, any business right now really has to work hard to get business and keep business. It's a tough economic environment out there, and I think we got to be, as they say, the best we can be, and having good trained employees that really work hard to please the customers and know things, and employers that know how employees should be treated. They know that what employees are expected. Employees should know what employers expect, like showing up on time, knowing your job, dressing the part, being able to diffuse tough situations, being able to say something about, hey, when you're here, you know, there's places to see, places to shop. There's events like, your farmers market on Saturday mornings and things like this here, So it's really important that employees know something about their business, know something about their product, and know something about the community.
Right, but and you still at need is still $300,000. This is what it shows here. And so of that need, you're asking for half of the need. Where's the other half coming from?
Well, yeah, what I wanted to do was, rather than ask for the whole enchilada, Danny, I was going to say, well, let's, and knowing that you have other grants that have been put forth to you and probably going to get some more, is that, I'd like to see how this w would work out. And if it works out well, I'd come back or also go to other funding sources, the Elminer Foundation or, whatever, or maybe CDBG. Kelly Ward's on there. I think this is a program that, if you can if CDBG can approve a for-profit economic development grant that doesn't really require much of any employee training at all, I think CDBG in the future could fund this program further than just half of it, the first half of it. And I didn't want to take $300,000 and not be able to produce. I thought, well, give them, 150,000 is reasonable. I can handle the workload as far as the number of employees or the number of businesses that want me to come in and do training during, staff training hours or, whatever breaks and things like that, so.
Greg, go
Greg.
ahead with your question or comment.
Um, yeah, I would like to know, I mean, some more specifics about the kind of training you're thinking of. Like, is it just teaching someone, like how to work a cash register, basic retail stuff? Is it teaching someone how to be a server in a restaurant? Is it teaching someone is it job specific training, or is it just wear nice clothes and show up on time?
Well, it's not so much like on how to run a cash register. I'll just give you like something that I worked on, from what employers expect from employees. One, show a positive attitude, be honest and have integrity, follow directions, apply good listening skills, especially to your customers, maintain a safe environment for yourself and other employees and your customers, work well with others, arrive to work on time, recognize problems and find solutions. Or if you recognize problems, take them to your employer so that they can be addressed rather than just keep festering out there. Manage your time effectively, respect diversity and increase tolerance. And that's just something. I also have got an employee needs survey where the employer gives expectations to the employees, and then of course the employees give some expectations to the employers. So increase the communication between the ownership and the workforce. And like I said, I really want to connect to some real local outcomes, keep our businesses open through a tough time, improving visitor experience or customer experience, and strengthening the local economy. So it's not just dressing the part, showing up on time, and knowing how to run the customer. It's like knowing your employer's expectations, knowing how to please the customer or help the customer. There's just a lot of things that go into that. It's an hour-long training, 60 to 90 minutes, probably, but it's important. There's so many times, employers don't know what employees expect of them and vice versa. I get requests from employers in Quincy, like, could you teach a course on what I expect of my employees? And this is, I love teaching those things. And of course, I put the shoe on the other foot. So employees expect something out of their employers too.
But is this something that's been entertained with like the school district or FRC with regard to some of their I know FRC has they have a first and second semester job fair, and then the schools have a career technical education program. Is this something that you've endeavored to look at with a partnership there? If we're just about the education component.
I haven't yet, but I'm meeting with Gabe Miller this week, and he's the person that's been in charge of the FRC job fairs for the last, I think the one we just had in the beginning of March was our third. But this is exactly what I want to go over because when potential employees come in, I'd like all of them to fill out what they think, what they expect out of employers. Because sometimes, we don't really take the time to ask. And then at the same time, all the booths that are, manned by or staffed, I should say, by employers, you know, um, it'd be nice to give them something that some employees expect out of them. So I think this is a wonderful gateway to that. And I have to tell you, I think oftentimes, when we look at small communities with limited resources. And I think, Marcia alluded to that, education and training. There's no reason why in the smallest areas, in the smallest businesses, that we can't, have the best customer service possible. It just takes a little bit of training, education, community, and things like that, and we can make it happen.
Um, Marcia, I'll come back to you. Lida has her hand up, and then we'll go to you, Marcia. Lida, you're muted.
Yeah, I
Yeah, okay.
couldn't find the bloody button.
No problem. Sorry.
So I don't hear anything in here that I dislike. I think the education thing is important, supporting business is important. I don't have anyway, it's that's all fine. But I don't understand how how the businesses are selected, what's the criteria for what business is able to or is required to participate in this process, and um, how how what's the justification for us providing that to private companies?
A couple things, Lila. First of all, like most grants, eventually, you have to have first come, first serve. But I think I put in my grant that I wanted a board. A grant approval board would have at least two people from the DFC on it. So I've got guidelines. I mean, Kelly's gone through a lot of guidelines, for the Greenville Economic, for-profit economic development grant. I've got a lot of guidelines, but I don't want to throw them on you. I would like to sit down with, if you approve this grant, and even if you say, we'd approve it, you give us guidelines, but I would like to go over those guidelines, with the DFC because there's all kinds of guidelines. I mean, one of them that has been a real problem for the Dixie Fire for-profit economic development grant is getting the SAM number, a unique entity identification number. It's a difficult process the way it is, but I have to tell you, in the last, well, I don't know how many days now, 47, 8, 9 days, getting an EIN and a SAM number out of the government that's partially closed has been terrible. And yet we have a grant that requires it. So it's like, it's difficult. So maybe, we can have all the other requirements, but maybe not do that so that things like that don't get in the way, so again, so I think the three things, I think the third point was, why should you do this for businesses? um I think you should do it for businesses and employees and for the community, for the recovering community, and I just think it's a benefit for everybody.
Thank you for
Kelly,
that, Clint.
you want to weigh in on anything,
Well,
Kelly?
Hey, Clint, I'm still moderating, so I
Oh,
appreciate, and
yeah, you're right. Sorry.
I'll come to Kaylee. Yeah, I'll come to Kaylee in a moment, but I have Marcia, who already had her hand up, and Kim, and then I'm happy to have Kaylee speak. Um, and once again, to Leda's point, and Clint, just to bring this back to the fold again, I don't know that anybody is not supportive of small businesses in this forum right here. It comes back to feasibility, legality of how a community foundation of which our money is held with is able to directly fund for-profit businesses. And when you and I spoke before, the contrast that I made with the community development block grant that's being administered by Plymouth County is that's money that has gone from the feds to the state and then to Plymouth County specifically for that purpose. And therein lies the critical difference between that CDBG DR money and then what we're talking about here. I just wanted to draw that out of why there are some of these bureaucratic barriers that exist that are beyond our ability to control sometimes. And that was Bill's initial hesitation when we spoke about this after the March meeting. Again, it did not have the education component in it. And maybe that's the rub is then separating the two from $7,500 going to a business as opposed to Clint shepherding a small business education program from the Innovation Hub. So two entirely separate projects or programs. Marcia Roby.
No, I just wanted to make a comment because I think that one of the biggest problems between employers and their staff is communication. Communication, what they want, what they need, best practices. And I'm hoping that you would run scenarios with them, with the employer, with the employees. If this happened, what would you do? Or this is what you should do. That kind of, just a comment.
Okay, thank you, Marcia. We'll go Kim and then we'll go to Kaylee.
So I guess my question, Clint, I heard you say, oh, this would be first come, first serve. So how is this disaster related? Could anybody apply and it's first come, first serve? I mean, how are you qualifying what businesses get the 7,000 or whatever to pay the employee?
Well, I was going to open up to anybody in Indian Valley. I mean, the whole Indian Valleys is part of the disaster recovery. So I didn't want to, I think one of the rubs that I've seen, and I've personally heard this, like in the for-profit, is that there's some businesses that are 60 feet from the line, 60 feet, and so they don't qualify. But
So you're saying Dixie Fire Burn Scar, maybe?
yes,
If you're limiting it to, okay, to businesses in the burn scar.
yeah.
Okay, good to know. Thanks.
Okay,
I wanted to,
Kaylee. Oh, go ahead. Did you have a follow-up to that one, Clint?
oh, no, I'm sorry. I was going to address Marcia. I forgot you were going to go with Kaylee next. So finish Kaylee and then I'll go back to Marcia.
Yeah, and it's just in the interest of time. Yeah, go ahead, Kit.
I just wanted to make the distinction for the community development block grant for-profit business economic recovery. It was tied to those low and moderate areas as defined by HUD. So, that grant in particular does have some particular guidelines when it comes to who's eligible and how it's deemed eligible. And yeah, as Clint mentioned, some entities are 60 feet from the eligible zone. And because of how the grant program itself was allocated and making sure we meet those national objectives, then trickles down to how the grants are deemed eligible and awarded. So just want to make that distinction.
Yeah, so like the real crux of that is it's census area block 2 for whatever that means, and those census blocks get created in Washington D.C. or wherever, and a line gets drawn on a map. And so in this particular instance, there's a line that runs right down Highway 89 that excludes Hot Springs Road, and it excludes the north side of Highway 89, but not the south side of Highway 89. It includes Williams Valley Road, but it excludes Powerline Road, right? So there are these unfortunate nuances of how an arbitrary line on a map gets drawn, which had made that one particularly unfortunate for a number of our businesses. And there's not, back to influence and control, there's not a lot of ability to influence that because it is what it is. Yes, Clint, thank you.
One of the nuances that I see in this, Kelly, and I'm not finding fault with anybody because you have to live with those guidelines, but I just found it interesting that this is for businesses, and yet they went with personal LMI. It's got nothing to do with businesses. You know, you can have a business owner that is LMI or not LMI, but if they're in that area, they're eligible. I don't know why they went with personal LMI when we're talking about businesses because those are, for me, almost two different things.
Yeah, perhaps a conversation for a different place, different time.
And Marcia, I wanted to address you. You talked about stories, and that's one of the best way to is to educate is telling stories. Do you remember the movie Five? I think it's called Five Easy Pieces or Six Easy Pieces. Remember the restaurant scene with? Okay, I show that a lot in customer service because it's like, could this waitress not see that she's making the customer more upset with every blockage? And finally, the guy just tips the table over and swears. And, I mean, it's like, okay, so, this is where, we have to work a little harder at being patient and identifying whether we're fixing the problem or not, or, that type of thing. But yes, those are the things that when I do customer service sessions and things like that, I use that video all the time.
Hold the tomato, hold the lettuce, hold
Yeah,
the tuna.
exactly.
Good old Jack Nicholson. All right. Well, again, some things that need to be determined here, both legally and financially. So recommend again, this is tabled for now unless there are any objections to that. And then just we'll continue to follow up. And Clint, I'll follow up with you directly as things develop.
Yeah. And thank you so very much, Patrick and everybody. I do want to say I'm open to this. You folks live there. I've worked in Greenville a lot. I go through there all the time. I've worked with 15 businesses getting, the for-profit grant, and I know a lot of what's going on, but I'm certainly open to suggestions or alternate things to offer, whatever. It doesn't have to be my idea. It's not. This is for the community. So I'm open to anything that you want to add or delete if possible. So thank you for your consideration.
Yeah, Danny, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm trying to cast this and see how it casts anew. So I'm a little confused because I think it's still the same because we still have the $7,500 per employee, and we still have that, but we're kind of adding in an educational component. We're keeping that 7,500 number. So I'm not seeing what the real difference is. If we're throwing in some training and we're going to say it's different, but the requested amount didn't change. So, and anyway, I'm just trying to understand really what's truly different rather than just saying, oh, we're going to provide training to people, which is valuable, but I'm not seeing how that dramatically changes the grant. Just
Okay. Thank you for your comments, Danny. Once again, we'll just continue to we'll put a bookmark on this one, and then I'll follow up with some more information as I talk with Bill and Kim, and then just try to continue to shed more light on so everybody can make the best decision possible.
Yeah. I'll sign off, but I do want to thank everybody, and I especially look forward to a discussion maybe with Kim and with Bill over this to see if there's anything that can be included to make this more of a community benefit. So I'm open.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Clint.
Sure.
Appreciate your time.
You bet. Thank
Have
you,
a good day.
everybody.
So next item is coordinators update, and I was going to touch on. Oh, Kim, do you have a question or comment?
Well, Clint, are you?
I'm still here, yes?
Oh, I know I didn't. Oh, I didn't know if you raised your hand, if you had a
Oh,
comment.
no, I just, I forgot to lower it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess what would be helpful to me before I have our attorney spend a lot of time reviewing this is this something the committee feels really strongly about doing? Is this where you see the recovery dollars going? Because I think we need to get a sense of is it like, yes, we really want to do some type of grant to support businesses, or we want to support the individuals working for those businesses? Because lots of times I can work with Bill and others about, well, how could we make this work? So I guess, and this is maybe just something for you all to think about and discuss at a later point. When you look at the dollars that you have left, what do you think is the highest and greatest priority of that use in your communities? And we can't answer that question. We're coming up in May to do a visit and hopefully meet with folks to talk with our funds about what's missing, what do you need? But is this, that's kind of a question I would have for you all.
Well, I'll hang up because I do have to go, but Kim or Patrick, if you want to get back with me or anybody, any individual or whatever, you can reach me anytime, and I sure appreciate your thoughts and I appreciate your consideration so far. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Clint.
You bet.
Does anyone have any thoughts? Do you want us to put a lot of time and energy into figuring out a way to make this work? If you say yes, then as a consensus, yes, please figure out a way to make this work. That's where I'll start the conversation.
What I wanted to, I was going to send it out after this, but I found it took me a second to find. But on March 16th, I sent you all an email, basically based off of the last conversation that I had with Kim and Bill about the difficulty with this. And the different one of the aspects is the community. It's not community benefits good, but then it has to do with a quote unquote charitable class. And the charitable class being a for-profit business, that becomes an issue from a nonprofit. So an issue that Bill brought this up is that here's a nonprofit, North Valley Community Foundation, who's giving money to another nonprofit to then just give it to a business in that regard. That's as opposed to, whereas like some of the money that has gone to businesses in this, it's been for a service or like it's been a vendor. Like there's been a service that's been provided. So we paid for that service. So this is different in that it goes as $7,500. I can't remember. I think we also talked about was also the premise. The idea is good in trying to drive more business, but providing more staff doesn't necessarily provide. I think you brought that up, Greg, was how do you get people in the door though? So if you have a business and you're open for 12 hours and you had 2 people working and now you have 4 people working, does that change your bottom dollar? Like, have you now, what has that done for your demand? I think that was something that you talked about last month. And then some of the quick math was the 7,500, if you're working at 32 hours a week at $25 an hour, that gets a business owner about 9 1/3 weeks of staffing on that. So in that 9 1/3 weeks, in that 2 months and 1 week, is that enough having additional service? And, Matt's on the call. He has a business where he has at least 2 staff members working at a time in a cafe, I don't think he would, push away $7,500 to help him get through 9 1/3 weeks. But then what happens at that? Where's that? How have you been able to drive revenue in that 2 months time? To then take the place of the $7,500 that you no longer have. So that was a consideration as well. As opposed to, I think, like the tide raises all ships, right? So is there a kind of fundamental economic and or business development idea that could come to try to help burn scar businesses in their entirety. Hopefully, I mean, it has in almost 5 years, it has yet to materialize. The for-profit grant that Kaylee in Plumas County has, that's been super helpful because yeah, it's up to just over $22,000 if done correctly to buy equipment. That's pretty good. I mean, that saves you time and trouble. It can also pay payroll. It can also do a number of things. But that's another consideration to think about what the impact of that has been. And that kind of leads me to the segue here is there's a lot of unknowns with what really that best thing is. And Plumas County has put out survey links for both an economic development survey and also a housing component. Kaylee, do you want to give us just a minute or two on that?
Yeah.
Kind of what it is and then the overall purpose?
Yeah, so overall purpose of the project is we're doing an economic development study for Greenville, Indian Valley, and Canyon Dam, and a countywide unincorporated area housing assessment. So I will say that the economic development study, here we are, over a month into the study, it's turning into a little bit more of a regional conversation. There are so many regional linkages in the Plumas County economy that it's turning into a bit of a broader discussion, but still really looking at targeted strategies for Indian Valley, Greenville, and Canyon Dam. So the county's hired a consultant, PlaceWorks, and PlaceWorks is, sorry, Patrick, the survey is actually closed on the 31st. So we are out of the
A week
survey.
ago. Sorry about that.
They've prepared a draft existing conditions analysis, looking at both the housing and the economic component, just because they are so intrinsically interlinked. And then there will be two separate deliverables, an economic development strategy and a housing strategy. And we are having two virtual roundtables. One is on Thursday, April 16th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. And one's on Friday, April 17th from 10 to 11:30 a.m. And during those virtual roundtables, we'll be kind of presenting results from the existing conditions study, from the surveys, the public surveys that went out, and then also presenting kind of like broad overview of some potential strategies to get community feedback and public input on those. So yeah, with that, that's kind of where we're at. The entire project has to be, tied to grant funding here, so has to be wrapped up by May 10th. It is a very fast-moving project, but I'm very pleased with the work that PlaceWorks doing already. They've synthesized a lot of the existing reports that are out there and really being able to provide like a robust discussion into what some of that data means and give it to us in a format that's digestible and will hopefully help inform some feasible strategies, not things that are too far out, but real kind of 5-year actions that the county can invest in and take that will help our current housing and economic situations.
Yeah, thanks for that, Kaylee. And I just, in case you're not seeing that in the chat, I put those dates and times, and that was from the email. If you haven't gotten the email, I sent that out just to the steering committee right now. I'm happy to send that out on our MailChimp listserv as well, just to broaden awareness. But it's next week, Thursday and Friday.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
With the times there in the chat, and then you can see how to register. Yeah, I mean, again, this is, I'm speaking for myself here, but like the constant, like another study, another survey, another study, another thing, right? And then how does that lead to implementing something? I know that that's a constant concern now of late of where we are in the life cycle of recovery. So when you say feasible, actionable sort of things, I hope that it does include that to something that is relevant to this area, because it's one of those things where it's the fire has definitely exacerbated the issues that probably already existed prior to the fire. that were left unaddressed when it comes to economic development across the county to be something beneficial for the relatively small population and the different types of economic sectors that we can provide a market to. Yes, Matt, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so when we met like about a month ago with Tracy and Kevin, and there was some decision to maybe try and buy some land from IVCSD and build some county buildings on that. Was there any update on that process?
That's the next agenda item that I have on there that says Town Hall and Library. So I'm happy to give that update in like 20 seconds. Does anybody want to talk about this topic anymore? Okay. Well, Kaylee, thank you for that information. And I think it's exciting that there's still movement on it, and it's helpful that PlaceWorks will have something to report on that hopefully does give us, and maybe that's the thing, right? Like I was saying, like if there's something fundamental in there that can support to community benefit the variety of businesses that we have, or create something that's more engaging in the landscape that helps develop that, maybe that's something we could take a look at, depending on what their findings are. Okay, so yeah, Matt, to your point, February, because the scheduling never worked in January, but in February, myself, Matt, Kaylee, and Tracy Ferguson, and then Kevin Goss met with us toward the tail end. We talked about the county's role in the recovery as it relates to their county buildings. So once again, just for review, the county owns 3 buildings in Greenville, all of which they lost. So one was the town hall. That was then 2/3 of that lot was the town hall. 1/3 was the fire station. And then kind of catty corner across the street from that was the library, the Greenville branch library of the Plymouth Public Library. And then the sheriff's substation, which interestingly enough is actually, it's partly owned by Plymouth County and it's partly owned by the Superior Court System of California. One of those weird curveball things that's got to be figured out on how that's going to proceed. But anyway, that substation, at least to replace quote unquote kind of what was lost, that's the building is still going to remain there, or at least whatever that is there. The services for the deputy substation will be now provided in the Greenville Safety Center, which is the Indian Valley Community Services District building for their fire department that's being built on Highway 89 currently. Okay, so back to the town hall and the library. So when we talked, there was the potential for, at least the idea was, we've got this town center idea, the CSD, at least when they had the previous general manager and some previous board members were interested in potentially taking on additional community services insofar as running like a community center / town hall that had this multifunctional approach on Main Street in between Mill and Highway 89 on the frontage of the west side of Main Street. So the Indian Valley Community Services District no longer wants to pursue that plan, which is fine. And so that would leave just Plymouth County as an independently rebuilding the buildings that they lost, which was the town hall and the library. So then the discussion is, how do you want to do that? When we talked in February, there was the potential to maybe trade, the 2 parcels that the county currently owns with some of the parcels that Indian Valley Community Services District owns, kind of do a swap or a sale or however people want to manage properties, up to them. And then on a meeting on the supervisors meeting on March 17th, Supervisor Goss, and it also sounded like Supervisor Hall said, hey, you know what, let's just hold with what we got. We have the parcel on Highway 89 on the south side. We have the parcel on Highway 89 on the north side. Let's hold on to those. Let's look at what rebuilding looks like there with, the aforementioned services reinstated. The library, a town hall meeting space, And then there might be the potential for some additional office space where county services could be provided. That's kind of still taking shape and a lot of questions, but just the basic parameters. And I believe at that March 17th meeting, if I'm not mistaken, there was direction to staff, i.e. Kaylee, who's with us here today, to pursue what that kind of looks like. Do I have that kind of accurate, Kaylee?
Yeah, that's a great summary. So I think I will just add a little bit more history on the original town campus center concept. It was a conceptual planning for the IVCSD was kind of leading with the previous management and previous board to not only have town hall and library, but also there's a large indoor recreation component, looking at potentially an indoor full-size swimming pool, at like a cafe and kind of like a central hub made up of several different buildings that would kind of give like a town center feel and a place for people to gather. And so current IVCSD leadership has voiced that, they're not interested in championing that project. And with that, the county Board of Supervisors giving me direction as to look at what's feasible to get the town hall and the library there. But I think there is, still a level of opportunity to look at what ideas were originally planned in that town center campus. And still kind of incorporate them into as we're looking at designing the new county facilities, what's feasible and what's useful for the community. So as Patrick was saying, potentially consolidating town hall and library into one facility, especially with a town hall if it had a commercial kitchen. I've been meeting with the librarian and with facilities. And yeah, the librarians voice that would give some opportunity for literacy programming and additional educational opportunities if they were to be consolidated, and then also like a cost savings benefit too. So yeah, still looking at opportunities, but focusing on what we currently hold as a county and getting those services back into Greenville.
Thank you, Kaylee. Danny, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I have a question. So since the town hall was 2/3 town hall and 1/3 fire department, would we be considering town hall as we speak now as the full apple as opposed to 2/3 of the apple as far as resource?
I think the full apple, to use your terminology. I think the county owns a full lot is the issue, and that or they don't.
No, we don't own the portion that the fire.
The fire hall was on. All right, so yeah, there you go. So it's still 2/3, 1/3 of that same rectangular lot.
But as we work through the process, yeah, definitely looking for the need or the opportunity. I think if the need is demonstrated, then potentially being able to engage IVC or I don't think it's IVCSD, I'm not sure who the parcel owner is. The fire district itself, perhaps.
Not to make things more confusing. Go ahead, Matt.
Could you see us breaking ground this year?
In 2026?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the fire was like 5 years ago, and it's like molasses in terms of like even decisions about what we're going to do or what piece of land, right? It's like there doesn't seem to be much urgency at all so far from the county. And yeah, and it's only March, right? But actually April, sorry, it's April now. I mean, it's still like early in the year, right? We've still got another 8 months. I don't know. I mean, so far just nothing's been done, and it's 5 years, and we've got 8 months, right? What do you expect in the next 8 months? I mean, it seems like those are important parts of the redevelopment of Greenville, and so far they just doesn't. I don't know. I'm not that close to it, but it seems that nothing's been done, right? I don't know if anyone else is like, we've done all these studies and we've done lots and lots and lots of studies and post-it notes right up the wazoo, but nothing's been rebuilt on behalf of the county. And
I will say
yeah,
that to your point, Matt, is we've got the Greenville Rancheria that's going to break ground here soon. They're
sure.
planning their reconstruction. The museum, they believe that they're going to be done sometime this year. That's a big one for Main Street.
Yeah,
To
that's
your
great.
point, yeah, to your point, from the county side, yes, it has been to use your term. We got the apple from Danny, and we got you
Well,
talking
that's
about molasses. You guys are making me hungry. But yes, yeah, I mean it's been difficult, and if anybody recalls that June 6th of 2025 was almost 10 months ago, it was 10 months ago in the library at the high school. There were the principles and priorities that were articulated by the board to move forward on certain things. And really, if we're being honest, not much has really occurred with those principles and priorities since then. Again, a positive step forward is to have ownership of it, ownership in terms of staffing it appropriately. So, the Board of Supervisors did move forward with the staffing of a long-term recovery coordinator for the county, which that's Kaylee. She's here with us right now. So she has the Herculean task of trying to figure all this stuff out and working with the other department heads across the county to do that. So, that's the silver lining. But I mean, I don't want to, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's been very slow. Danny, to your question, and then there is another topic. We do want to talk about the Plymouth Sun and IVCSD.
Right. The thing I just want to bring up, and as far as, and thinking about things, why is the molasses being molasses, is that there's not heat being applied to make it a little more fluid because, residents and not just property owners, residents, are they really actually chewing on this county supervisor of the county? So there hasn't been enough heat applied. If there was more heat applied, then things might start flowing. But how does that happen? It's the thing is, I don't know, but I think that's a real answer. It's not perceived as a real need. Otherwise, there would have been more action.
I hear you guys. Yeah, definitely appreciate your input and just want to voice that it is a priority for me, especially since that March 17th direction. So, working through the design and what's feasible, Matt, I do want to be realistic and like ideally, yeah, let's break ground, let's get something built, but realistically, will it happen this year? I'm not sure. So I'll definitely keep everyone updated as I work through a work plan and there's still a lot of steps and here we are 5 years later, but just acknowledging that there is still the process that we have to go through and appropriate design and making sure that, this is kind of our one chance with the insurance and the settlement monies and making sure that we're doing it appropriately is also a priority for me. So being able to try and find that balance between timeliness and making sure we're doing our due diligence in the planning realm. But yeah, as I work through developing work plans and timelines and whatnot, I'll be sure to keep everyone appraised, but I do appreciate your input and I hear you. It's time and it needs to be a priority.
Patrick, I know you want, I want to just hit one time, as
Yeah,
a
sure.
non-resident property owner who has chosen to build back, there are other people that need more motivation to choose to build back. And if the county facilities aren't coming back, they aren't going to make the choice. So, it's like, do we have the demand out there? No, you've got to go out in faith. And so I hear you, Kylie, but I'm just saying there needs to be, that will help pull people back or encourage people to come back. We've got to do everything we can to, spend the money to do that. And that's a hard thing to do in the county that doesn't have money. All right. I'll stop.
No, I appreciate that, Dan. Thanks for your comments and across the board. And yeah, it is definitely um, yeah, day by day, and um, important to focus on some of the things though that are developing, have been developed, and a lot of the people that have built back, Danny. But yes, to your point, creating a demand to entice those that are kind of on the fence that things are moving. So hopefully with the Rancheria back and that up and running in the next year and a half, the museum and a couple other things that'll help to repopulate a little bit. Okay, so just for the benefit of everyone's awareness, in case you didn't check your email, but I think you did. So we received a letter from an email from Dan Kearns, acting as a citizen rather than a board member of the Indian Valley Community Services District, which he is, talking about there's an issue with the CSD, the IVCSD, and the Plymouth Sun with regard to a press release. There's a press release that so let me back up a little bit. So the $25,000 that the steering committee committed to a grant request the CSD had asked about fulfilling the need for essentially communications representative, some public relations and things of that nature. So they could not only publish the information of their meetings, but just general information of what's going on with the CSD on a variety of platforms. So they were working on doing that. It looks like they hired an individual to do that for them. And there was a press release that individual submitted to the Plymouth Sun for release. Jane Braxton Little, who is the editor-in-chief of the Plymouth Sun, declined to publish the press release as it was. My understanding is that the Plymouth Sun, just like a lot of other news organizations, has editorial authority. So the press release itself, I think she wanted to edit, and the CSD wanted it published verbatim. So that's an issue that they are discussing or that they have issue with between the Sun and the CSD. Dan's question was around our funding of the grant, the $76,000 for the disaster recovery reporter, and what deliverables we have for them with regard to that reporter. So just to baseline a couple things. One thing is that $76,000. So the Plymouth Sun, underneath the Almanac Foundation, they applied for that grant in August or in July, and then it was approved in August. So the Plymouth Sun, like any of our other grantees, they have a year to essentially make good on their grant request. Meaning, making good on it is a report of just the general like 5 W's of how the money was spent, and then updating any sort of budget items with regard to that money. So in terms of like a clock or a timeline, it hasn't necessarily been anything that has been violated in that regard. The Plymouth Sun by this August will provide an annual report that talks about how they've spent that $76,000 grant. That's essentially it. I mean, so too, that's the same thing that the CSD, for that matter, has to do with the $25,000 they receive, right? The only deliverable, quote unquote, that's required to be given is the annual report. So that's one thing. That one's a pretty easy one. I'm happy to follow up with Dan to explain that. Public Records Release Act, not really applicable to us. Because that's something that he mentioned, because we're not a public entity like a state or local government entity. So we're not the supervisors, we're not the county, we're not, we're a sub element. The steering committee, you all are a sub element of a fund that's held with North Valley Community Foundation, which is a nonprofit. But at the end of the day, the grant itself, the request that Plymouth Sun made and the grant agreement, nothing's top secret there. So if there are no reservations, I'm happy to provide copies of those to Dan if he would like. But that's why I'm bringing it up now, so we can kind of discuss this further if there's any sort of things that I'm not thinking about. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of baseline a couple of those things with regard to his request. It seems like it'd be a pretty easy one to satisfy. And then as far as how things play out between the Plymouth Sun and the Indian Valley Community Services District, that's kind of over to them on how they want to solve this issue. Greg, I know you wanted to talk about this specifically, so if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, recalling the conversation back in last July or whatever, we talked about them applying for another funder who declined it, I think, as I recall, but said that there needed to be some guidelines or guardrails put on the performance, because I find it difficult to believe that they have a full-time job for a reporter just on the file recovery. I think it's a little bit late for that. And part of that conversation was that if they had an additional reporter, they could apply for a different grant.
Yeah.
That was actually what this was about. Not and the excuse was, we're going to have a full-time reporter just covering the fire recovery. So I think that.
Well, and Greg, I mean, again, we don't know that. That sounds like that's an assertion.
That is an assertion.
Again, like what I'm hearing is that's an assertion that you're making, and it would need to be justified, and you would have to provide like some type of like justification. Like you would have to provide justification that you know that to be true, based off of everything that they've told us. I mean, we don't know that that's not why they applied for the grant, and it wasn't in their documentation.
Right.
That if that's your personal opinion, that's fine. You
That
can
is my
have your
personal-
personal opinion.
Yeah.
But then you would have to, because it sounds like you're making an allegation, and far too often when people, what I've found is when people don't understand or they don't like something, it's very easy to allegate without actual justification or
I
like,
would like to know
evidence.
how many
evidence.
stories they've written on the fire recovery since that money was granted.
Yeah, sure. Well,
I mean-
again, but they just hired that individual, and there's so many things, and this is just a quick time out on the Plumas Sun. There are so many areas in our county that lack capacity, and again, this is my opinion. There aren't a lot of like beat reporters just walking around Plumas County. Like, so the fact, I think Kim just said that when she talked on this a couple hours ago when we got started, she touched on the fact that they just hired somebody, which I was unaware that they even hired somebody. Yet I knew that they had been asking, like they had been running the job, because on their on the news website themselves, they had a banner across the top that said, hiring reporters. So in that regard, I would just say that like it takes time to hire anybody around here, because there's only so many when you start to get into like specialty professions, of which I don't know how many journalists there are in a county of 19,000 people. So that's all. Like I know that it's taken some time to actually find who that person is.
I would just like to see, I mean, in terms of a small community newspaper, I would like to see them be able, right now they don't have letters to the editor or anything like that. So they set themselves up as a one-way voice that is supposed to be unbiased, but they've set it up so that there's no way for them to get community feedback on how they're doing. And I think that
I think that's a reasonable request, Greg. I don't think that's a problem. And to have questions about the how they like their editorial board and all those things, I think that's something that people want to see, because once again, the whole premise of this is that we have a place for news, ideas, and information to be shared, and for like opinion from a citizen to be brought up like yours, right? So that would be a good place for that. And as I understand from what when Jane and Sierra, back to those conversations, is that's a place that they want to get to. It's just that they've been scratching and clawing just to survive in their first couple of years. That it's been challenging just to produce what they are. And then, yes, of course, trying to grow to do exactly what you're talking about. I'm sorry, I don't want to take the floor too much. Danny, you have your hand up.
Yeah. I guess the one thing it does bring up deliverables or grants. And thinking about that, and is it such that there should be some more expectation, maybe more tighter expectation as opposed to just get back in a year as to how you spent that. And unless we put that in at the get-go, it's awful hard to turn around and modify that. So, and that's something seriously when we think about this, well, we could have done better, and we have to just leave it at that. I don't think we can change it horseback, but we can look at that as we go into the grants that we're going further with. But that's just something that, more responsibility placed, but we're all volunteers, right? We don't know all this stuff, but of course, as a project manager, this should have been done. The other thing too is just to take out, so that's just on in general grants. But just going back in general on a newspaper or such or anything that published, I would think that if an entity comes here and would like say, can you post the minutes of our meeting or post what has happened, and here's what's happened, that, the amount of time and effort that actually would go into that is extremely minimal. And that would be a huge amount because you give yet another avenue for that information to get out. So
Yeah, I agree with you, Danny, but I also think it's worth, because right now we've only got one side of this, right? We don't really know what the reasons were for the Plymouth Sun. And I'm not in I think it's important to stay unbiased about this. B, we don't know what we know what the IVCSD has said that it asked for, but we also don't know if there's a deeper explanation as to why the Plymouth Sun hasn't necessarily published that. So I think it'd be worthwhile to talk to them about that if that was the issue. And then the other thing is if I just find, I don't know if it's us or anybody else, if we're dictating what they start to publish, just because we gave them money, that's a slippery slope, because then what if they write a bad story about the Dixie Fire Collaborative? Do we now have the right to say, don't publish that story because we gave you $76,000? And then that seems highly unethical, that we're trying to switch. If they write a bad story about us, warts and all, well, so be it, right? And we got to just,
I think you have the right to
refute
rebuttal,
that.
though. I think you have a right to
Say
a
again?
rebuttal. I think you have the right to a rebuttal.
And 100%, we could take care of that on our own. But it would,
if they won't publish it, then we don't have the audience for the rebuttal.
Yeah, but back to your point, in a small town, I'm sure plenty of people that get what they call the news from Facebook, right? Or the Barstool conversation, right? So I get that. I'm just simply saying I think it's a slippery slope before we start to dictate what we're not the editorial board for a small town news organization.
Yeah. I just want to reflect what they said in their letter. Their back thing is not calling it not journalism. It's not journalism. Would never be purported to be journalism. What was provided by the IVSC, it was a report. It was a question.
100%. Yep.
So, and whether or not, of course, the person who provided was paid or whatever by that, because that's where the accuracy is. And so
yeah, that's her job. Yeah.
So anyway, as a public service, it could be done if they so chose. But then we could say they're not interested in public service. That would be a takeaway. Could be a takeaway. Anyway,
it could be.
So I'm just,
or maybe there's an underlying reason that we're just not aware of.
Yeah.
And that's my point. Is maybe there's just more to this. That's all.
Right.
Kim, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to address number one, what we do send, and I'm right now I'm not able to attach them, but I know Patrick and I could send to all of you the grant agreement we sent to them, which is our standard grant agreement that has a scope of work in it. And in the scope of work, it basically has what they said in their grant they were going to do. So, we have verbatim, that this money was going to be used. Yeah, in it at that, when we wrote the grant agreement, it was for the Almanor Foundation because that's who was going to administer it. But now when we redo it, it'd be the Plymouth Sun. But the amount was to grow their staff and expand their coverage for 1 year. And they will use it for a full-time reporter position or 2 part-time positions for 1 year. Since they haven't started it yet, that work has not been done. They never said, oh, we're going to start on this date. They said, we have to advertise a position. And once we get the position, that's when it will start. And then we have, the reporter will provide exclusive coverage of disaster recovery throughout Butte County and like I said, I'll send this to you. And then we always attach the budget. This is what they say they're going to spend their money on. And they have to spend their money on what they told us, or they need to come back and ask for permission to adjust their budget. So they basically said, 50,000 of it was going to go to a journalist, either one person or two part-time people, whatever they could get, and then the benefits, and then travel, and then 10% indirect cost. And then at the same time, we also attached the minutes of you all approving this. So all of that is in the grant agreement. That we send to people. Now, granted, in some grants, we will go into a lot more detail if we're really unsure, is this really going to happen? And I think, at least I feel like when you guys approved it, you were like, okay, I like this concept. And what they did discuss in there, and once again, we can send you the original agreement that you all read. They talked about Report for America, and that they could believe they could get ongoing funding down the road with Report for America as being a rural area that just doesn't have, has a hard time probably getting and retaining journalists. But the criteria is you must have had at least a full-time reporter for 1 year. And so that's where they said that if you guys kind of helped with the seed money to get them started, then it was their hope that there would always be a report, somebody, they could get ongoing funding from Report for America. And then I also did run this email and letter both by David Little on our staff, who was an editor of a newspaper, and Logan, who worked at a newspaper for years. And they both said that it's totally unethical. You don't just take someone's press release and put it in the paper as news. You either assign a reporter to go report on it and make sure it's legitimate, or it's a press release that Dixie Fire Collaborative is going to have a meeting at noon on, something that is just a verifiable fact. So they didn't find it super unusual that the Plymouth Sun wasn't willing to just take whatever any organization tells them and make it news. They need to, there's things that they have to do ethically to confirm that it actually is news. So I think there kind of is two sides to every story. And I agree with what Patrick was saying, this is a tough one, because if they write something that somebody doesn't like, then, which is obviously kind of what happened here, then do they come back and say, well, you shouldn't have funded them because I don't like what they wrote. I mean, that's kind of a slippery slope, right? We're getting into journalistic freedom here. So, and you didn't tell them, don't ever write anything bad about any group that is in Plumas County, so I think with grants, there's also a level of trust. And I kind of feel like when you guys funded this, you felt like, yeah, we want to have a local newspaper in our county. And that's something we think is important as part of our county. And at least that's a feeling I got when you all approved it, that why you thought it was positive. So anyhow.
I think, I think from the standpoint of the CSD, like I understand that they want their information published, right? Like that's a reasonable request from our local news organization. And then Kim, what you just described from the Plymouth Sun, if that's the case, right? If they need to vet or like determine the veracity of what's the information that's included in what they've received, that's also not unreasonable either. And that, between the two entities, they can like sort this out by just talking about it. I think of, what was in the press release that needed to be, fact checked or otherwise, if that's the case. And then
Context.
yeah, there you go. Context. Yeah. But I mean, maybe that's just, maybe it's that simple, right? For them to kind of figure this out. And I think it's great. Like, again, I know that the CSD is appreciative of the $25,000 to help make this happen, right? So that they can be, more transparent. It took them a little while to find somebody, from my understanding, just in talking with Jamie, their general manager, to find like the right person, etc. So I don't know, like, but as far as it relates to sharing this information with Dan, I don't necessarily see a problem with it. Does anybody have any heartache over this?
I mean, I think we should share whatever information we have. It's
Yeah.
like our meetings are open. I mean, there's no reason why we should not make whatever we have available
Yeah,
to
your
anyone who
minutes
wants
are,
it.
yeah, your minutes are online. Anyone can
Yeah.
attend anyone can go
Yeah.
back and look at the original. You have the, and basically all our documents do is kind of combine what your minutes say with what the grant said they were going to do.
Yeah.
So there's no
So,
reason to not.
if everybody's good with it,
Yeah.
I'll just follow up. Oh, I'm sorry, Lada, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, nothing.
I'll just follow up with the end this week, and I'll send them the items that Kim just brought up, the original grant, the grant agreement, and the minutes, and then and just see what we can do to help.
Yeah. And it might be helpful for him to look at the grant agreement that we sent to them for their communications person. It's the exact same thing. It's like, this is what you told us you were going to do, and this is what you spent your money on. So we didn't do anything, we didn't do anything special with Plymouth Sun. The only thing we did different is they had a fiscal agent for a while, but now that will be going away. But
Okay.
we're
Yeah.
tracking this grant just like every other grant.
Danny, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think that's just the thing right there. I'm looking at how are the grants tracked and specifically stated. And I'd have to go back and look, and I don't think I've seen that this is what is sent and this is what's assigned and agreed. If we had a signed and agreed copy, and actually I think ourselves, we should have the signed and agreed copy of each of our grants that have been granted and what people agreed to available, posted even with that signature of the person who agreed to the conditions of the grant. And then there would be the deliverables per se.
Okay. Well, it's almost 5:20, and I don't want to, real quick, I did want to follow up. There are a couple things, speaking of deliverables, the Little League fields, the Greenville Park. So I helped there last week, a few days. There was a crew doing the concrete to help put up the scoreboard. So we helped with that, getting the posts for the scoreboards in, the foul poles in, and some of the other, like there's some barbecues, right? Some park grills, 6 of them. So we got all those in, the concrete poured, etc. So that's moving along pretty well. We've got a fence topper, like a thing to go across the top rail of the fence. The footage signs that you'll see in left and right field and center field from home plate, those need to go on still. And then the actual scoreboards themselves, our electric scoreboards, they need to be hung. But all that stuff is going along. Grass looks pretty good. The fencing around each field is done. The dugouts on the west field are done and enclosed with fencing. So a lot of great progress there. So I just wanted to give you an update. Speaking of deliverables, Danny, and that was the overall project between the CSD, the IVRPD, Greenville Little League, and then the contributions that both the Dixie Fire Collaborative and North Valley Community Foundation gave. So anticipate an opening day there for Little League on May 9th, Saturday, May 9th. And it's pretty fun to come out. They usually have like a community member as the guest of honor to throw out the first pitch for the kids. National anthem, the kids parade on one of the fields, and it's a pretty good event. So I think they're going to do it there this year as opposed to across the street from Marcia's house at the school Little League field. So you won't have the bird's eye view that you normally do. Thank you, Cam. I see your chat. Thank you. But still a good day nonetheless, and you see a lot of people come out for that. Okay. Anyway, sorry to hop around there. And with that, are there any things to address right now? Is everybody good? Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll motion to adjourn, Danny.
Great. Thank you, Danny.
Marcia
And a
seconds
second?
it.
Marcia Roby second. And all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. And it looks like none opposed. All right. Well, thank you. We ran a little long. I appreciate your time and your contributions tonight. And yeah, thank you very much and have a great week.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Patrick.
Patrick.
Thank you, everyone.
Keep it going. We appreciate you, Patrick.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Semper Fi.
Semper Fi.
All right.